Hello, welcome to D-Transit and welcome back to another episode of This Week in Transit. This week, we'll take a look at news from the Northeast, Georgia, and California, as well as international news from Chile, the United Kingdom, and Portugal. Before we begin, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel and comment if I missed anything or if there's any news that you'd like to share. Without further ado, here's This Week in Transit. We'll start with news from the American Public Transportation Association, or APTA, an association that oversees data collection for almost all rapid transit agencies in the United States. Their 2025 fact book was recently released, marking 2024 ridership at 7.66 billion trips, up from 7.1 billion trips in 2023, but still below the pre-pandemic number of 9.9 billion reached in 2019. The US is at about a 77% post-pandemic recovery rate when it comes to public transit ridership. Over in New York, the city's comptroller, Brad Lander, has released a report card on the city's 332 bus lines. 186 of them received a D or F grade, despite the MTA's promise to improve the current 1 in 3 buses that arrive at stops late. For reference, 56% of buses received a D or lower due to bunching and timeliness, while just 7 lines received a grade of A. 3/4 of Manhattan buses in particular received a D or F, highlighting the gridlock conditions in the city's core as some buses run as slow as 5 miles per hour. Express buses have the lowest on-time rate thanks to their operation over congested bridges and tunnels, while select bus services perform the best, likely attributed to stop consolidation and all-door boarding. It's not all doom and gloom though. Lander's report was compared to statistics collected prior to congestion pricing, and it's found that the 106 bus lines operating within the Central Business District congestion zone have improved reliability scores by roughly 10% in the 5 months after implementation. A majority of this improvement came from increased speed along express bus routes. Down in Philadelphia, SEPTA is in the midst of a historic budgeting crisis. Legislators in Harrisburg failed to find a funding resolution for the state's busiest transit agency, forcing SEPTA to cut essential bus and rail services, while hiking fares up as much as 21.5% to make ends meet. But this week, a Philadelphia judge has ordered the agency to reverse the cuts, after a case was brought before the court alleging that SEPTA's cuts were not equitable and put low-income minority riders at a disadvantage. The judge has allowed SEPTA to hike fares, however, by as much as 21.5%, and the agency is requesting PennDOT to use its capital project funds to pay for operations. And through all of this, a funding resolution has still not been met in Harrisburg. On an opinionated note, this is a situation that should have never happened for the 6th largest city in the entire country, and the city that powers over half of Pennsylvania's GDP output. SEPTA is also the 6th largest transit agency in the country, both in terms of metro services and regional rail systems. The fact that Pennsylvania's legislators still haven't found a funding resolution for a budget gap of $213 million is astounding, but exactly what you'd expect for an American state where most of it hasn't really grasped the importance of transit in its densely populated city. We move down the eastern seaboard to Atlanta, where the city is pushing for a new Amtrak station in the downtown area of the city. Officials are looking to capitalize on the neighborhood's revitalization projects by adding a regional rail hub for Amtrak intercity and long-distance services. Atlanta's current sole Amtrak station, named Atlanta Peachtree, sits at the north end of the city, surrounded by major highways and almost a mile from the nearest MARTA transit stop. It's also served by just 2 trains a day, the southbound and northbound Crescent trains to New Orleans and New York respectively. Even with its desolate location, 78,000 people utilized the facility during fiscal year 2024, 10,000 more than the previous year. The city is currently looking at an area within downtown Atlanta, which would allow for connections within walking distance to a Greyhound bus terminal and 9 MARTA transit stops. The city would also have to communicate with freight companies, which has complicated past relocation efforts. Norfolk Southern and CSX are both pushing for the city to construct its own dedicated passenger rail right-of-way, rather than halting freight service along their tracks while trains are stopped at stations. Just under $1 million have been raised for a study, and Amtrak has asked Congress for an additional $30 million to build the new Atlanta station hub. Once constructed, the new station could see increased regional rail service, as the Georgia Department of Transportation is studying routes to Savannah, as well as interstate routes to North Carolina, South Carolina, Mississippi, and Tennessee. Out in California, the world-famous California High-Speed Rail project continues chugging forward, much to the frustration of its very outspoken critics. The authority has begun the procurement process for the high-speed rail equipment, including the track itself, the overhead catenary system, and cable, among more. The total cost for the 119-mile Initial Operating Segment, or IOS, would cost $507 million, and installation would begin within the next year. The iOS materials would be fully funded by the state of California, while further materials could be a blend of state and federal funding. The procurement process allows American manufacturers to competitively bid for 6 separate orders. 100% of the materials would be manufactured in the United States and are fully compliant with the Build America, Buy America Act. We return to San Francisco, but this time with more negative news. In his initial state budget projection, California Governor Gavin Newsom promised a $750 million loan for the Bay Area's transit agencies to help fill a funding gap. That loan now looks unlikely to be finalized before the state legislature ends its session on Friday, September 12th. San Francisco representatives have been told that the Department of Finance will likely not finalize a loan before the legislature adjourns, while Senators Weiner and Arguin have helped sponsor legislation that secures funding from 2026 onwards. These agencies could collapse until then. The biggest worry is for BART, the primary link between the East Bay and San Francisco. Service could be cut to just hourly on some routes, and some stations could even be shuttered to help keep costs down. MUNI, operator of light rail and bus service in San Francisco, could also cut their service in half. In Chile, construction has begun on Santiago's Line 9. The system currently has 7 lines in operation, lines 1 through 6 as well as Line 4A. Servicing 143 stations and 143 kilometers, 93 miles of track. The system carries around 2 million people every day as of 2023. 3 lines are currently under construction in Lines 7, 8, and 9. Line 9 began construction on August 19th, with the central 14-kilometer, 9-mile, 10-station section to be built first. The first section is expected to open in 2030. Before the second section is scheduled to open in 2032, while the final section is expected to open in 2033. End-to-end journey time would cut down to 35 minutes, 28% faster than the equivalent journey by bus. Across the pond in London, the capital city of the United Kingdom is undergoing a transit crisis. The National Union of Rail, Maritime, and Transport Workers, or RMT, represents a large majority of workers on the London Underground and Docklands Light Railway, or DLR, services. 9 months of failed negotiations with Transport for London led workers to vote overwhelmingly for a strike, which affects all London Underground service. For reference, on the 8th of September, all Underground lines were suspended. The Docklands Light Railway is also being affected in a separate pay disagreement with the same union. A separate strike planned by operator First Bus will severely affect bus service in Western London from the 12th of September to the 15th of September. To that end, the only public transit available in the city will be limited bus service, extremely limited to no DLR service, overground service, and limited Elizabeth Line service, leaving most people to fend for themselves. The strikes are planned to last from the 7th of September until the 11th of September. Our last stop in Portugal is a sad one. An accident occurred on the Gloria funicular, which connects the Restauradores Square with Bairro Alto in Lisbon, Portugal. 2 cars have operated the service since 1885. On September 3rd, one car of the funicular derailed and crashed, resulting in numerous injuries and fatalities. The car that derailed was at the top of the hill, speeding uncontrollably downhill before crashing into a building. A report authored by Portugal's Office for Prevention and Investigation of Accidents in Civil Aviation and Rail stated that the cable broke at the point where it joined the car itself, rather than breaking at another point within the rest of the system. The cable in question had a lifespan of 600 days, and was about halfway through that lifespan with no major faults noticed. The Gloria funicular, alongside the city's 2 other funicular systems, have been suspended since and thoroughly investigated by maintenance teams from CAHSR, the city's transit operator. And with that, we come to a close in This Week in Transit. If you enjoyed, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and comment below if I missed any news. Thanks for watching, have a great day, and I'll see you all next week.